A lot of teams in the North American League are focused on rebuilding, but our last match of the day is all about reunions. Spacestation and Luminosity have decided that the key to their success is get a bunch of old cores back together again in the hopes of pushing them to the next level. SSG and LG are in very different situations in the NAL. One of them wasn't even at any of the events from last year, and one of them was, but now it's time to see which reunion actually holds true. I'm Jacob, he's Laxi, he's Foxay. Last game of the day, we're getting an old LG core back together again, and we're getting the old Astralis core back together again. So this game should be pretty fun.
Yeah, they're slowly getting like all the players from the old team. Like, what if that was their plan the whole year, just slowly getting one by one, rebuilding the roster?
All we need
Shuttle
now
coming
is
back?
DP Fire and Shuttle, is that it?
I mean, in some ways, it's also kind of the Luminosity situation. It's a lot of players from a T2 league now coming back together, finding their footing here and seeing if they can get a better start than what they had in the previous season.
What are you thinking about, I mean, obviously we'll get to Iconic finally jumping back on Space Station.
Let's talk about Luminosity's SI points. They had 534.
I would say that's even a little bit too many points for LG that didn't actually qualify. so something in the back got messed up. It's honestly no big deal. For us, though, here, we need to break down each team individually, and we'll start with LG because these guys were not hot in Stage 2 of last year.
No, they did not have the best showing. I will say there were glimpses of success with this team, but ended up falling short. They felt like they needed to make a change. They did make that change, removing Asian, Snake, and Twist. Now they brought on Kix, they brought on Wi-Fi, and they brought on Hat, a former pro player from the Beast Coast roster. And 4 of these players, Silent, Eddie, Kix, and Wi-Fi, have teamed together to some extent, have some history together. So there is a history with this team. So they should be able to get this foundation started and be able to go off of that. And now it's just adding a pro player such as Hat onto this roster.
I mean, of all the players you could have added, there's a far worse that you could have gone with. You went with somebody who won Element 1 and was a runner-up in Element 2. You went with somebody who's teamed with those guys before on the old LG, and you went with somebody who had a phenomenal stage with Beast Coast in Stage 1 of last year. You could have done way worse, Fox.
You definitely could have done way worse. All 3 of these players have actually trialed with some other Pro League teams, and I only heard positive things about all of them, especially Kixro and Julian, obviously grinding through E2, both amazing performers in the T2 scene.
Yeah.
And they've just been able to put up amazing numbers and proven themselves, and so I'm happy they're finally getting their show. Same with Hat. He was a great player. Thank God he's on another team.
But there's a reason why they're making those changes, though. Specifically, it's this stage right here. When they played in the NAL on Stage 2 of 2023, they only had 1 win to their name. The only thing they were able to accomplish was getting 1 win over Space Station in Week 3. But here's the issue. They were tied on overall points at the bottom of the scoreboard, and they weren't able to get anything going that stage. So realistically, anything they do in 2024 is going to be better than their first showing.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, doesn't really look like the worst set of circumstances. They obviously got some really close games, 7-5 loss to OXG, 7-4 loss to M80. They were putting up some numbers. They definitely held their own a little bit. I think that's where the lack of experience came in, because they are still such a rookie team, a new team. And now, instead of getting a veteran player, their more veteran player is Hat, and they're just trying to bring more players back that they thrived in the T2 scenes with to have that more comfortability. And
what was interesting that you even talk about the inexperience, that's honestly what was losing them a lot of rounds. And in a lot of situations, they look like they had the advantage because of the lack of experience, whether it's someone just knowing how to play a position, whether it's someone knowing when to rotate or not when to rotate. That's what was really throwing Luminosity into a spin cycle that they could not seem to find themselves to get out of.
The thing is, they're still banking on the inexperience because they think the young guys are their future. The 3 players that they're adding on for this stage, only one of them had a whole boatload of Pro League experience before then, and their most experienced player is Hat, which isn't saying very much because his rookie year was just last year. So now you're adding 2 more rookies into the mix alongside Silent and Eddie, so they really think the young guys are the future.
Well, even with Hat's rookie year, he started off swinging. He was like the highest rated player in the beginning and started to tank off towards the end, but he had a phenomenal start and really pushed Beast Coast into a very powerful position in the standings. And then now again, they're bringing a roster that is comfortable for them. They know what to expect. They know everyone and how they play. And that feels good in general when you know what each and every single player does, what their little idiosyncrasies are. It just makes for a better team environment and a better growing environment.
I'm happy you said team environment, because that's absolutely it. We see some teams, you know, like the last game, cough, cough, where the pressure, the stress can build and try to be too perfect, and sometimes it can just choke you out. So when you focus focus more on the fundamentals and playing with people you know that you enjoy playing with, results come shortly after.
Let's talk about Spacestation, because they didn't make nearly as many changes as LG, but the one change that they did make is probably the single most impactful thing they could have done in the offseason. No longer is Hot and Cold a member of SG after a 2.5-year run with the squad. Now, King Iconic is back with the old Astralis core. Foxay, how good does this feel?
I mean, it feels great. To be fair, I never really expected Iconic to go to a team like M80 when he did join.
Agreed.
I really expected him to try and stick with Jack, J90. I was about to call him by his real name, J90, just because of how good they are as a duo, alongside with Forrest, call out the system, and especially the friendship. We talked about having a good environment. That environment in the Astralis team house thrived. And obviously it showed. They were able to get all the way to top 2 at the Charlotte Major, and I'm happy that they're slowly getting the pieces of the puzzle, and I would say the 2 players that are replacing the 2 Astralis players, in my opinion, are a lot better.
No, and you look at this SSG roster, that is literally practically the Astralis roster, minus Fultz, minus Ashen, but that team environment that we were just talking about, if you think of any team and how a team environment is, SSG is like the pinnacle of that. You don't see any other team environment the way that they are. They're waking up at 5 a.m., doing cold plunges, getting in a workout, then doing practices. Now you're bringing Iconic back onto the roster where they already found success with that Astralis roster. I mean, it's got to feel good when you have those 3 or those 4 core members now bringing in an Iconic, that it's setting the team up for a lot of success. I mean, look at LeBronic right there.
He certainly sets the vibe for every team that he's in, but we should talk about Hot and Cold briefly because he's a legend. He's a fan favorite out of this team. Fox, what are they losing by Hot and Cold no longer being on this roster?
I think they just lose a little bit of consistency. You know what you're getting when you get a player like Hot and Cold on your team. You know what he's going to bring, and you know what he's going to be able to accomplish. You know exactly where he's at. But I think SSG obviously is looking for a little bit more. They're trying to transition into having obviously a little bit more late game direction. They're a team that they love exposing gaps. When they see a play, they make a play. Any player on the team at any moment. So when you are making a lot of plays, putting yourself in these difficult positions, what do you need to be able to tie everything together? You need that late round direction. And I think Fultz has been doing a great job, but adding Iconic to it, just adding 2 people that can really keep an eye on it, just makes things a lot easier.
There's also not really a scenario in which adding Iconic to a team is ever going to be considered a bad move necessarily, even if it didn't work out with M80. If you had the chance to get him on your team, you should take that.
Well, this move, and like Fox said, I never thought he was going to go to M80 either. I thought he would have stayed with his boys.
He kind of had to go somewhere after Astralis blew.
Yeah, of course, but this makes the most sense to me when looking at rosters and changes in this regard, because this is where I always thought Iconic should have gone in the first place.
That's fair. Let's look at how they did over the course of last year. In some cases, really good. In others, you could see the places where they could have soared even higher at some point. They went to Copenhagen and had more wins than losses, but still went out early. Actually, every single tournament they went to last year, they were plus in the win column compared to the losses and still weren't able to get any higher than top 8.
I don't want to say this. I want to Copenhagen, whatever. The Atlanta Major, that's where they really were bringing to a proving ground to see what this new variation of SSG could really look like. Then you went into the Invitational, and sure, those are both top 8 finishes, but the difference between the top 8 finish at Invite versus Atlanta, they had way stronger opponents, and they still managed to place top 8.
Yeah, it was about that consistency. I mean, clearly Hot and Cold brought a level of consistency. Obviously, they found consistency in the way that they want to play. A lot of people questioned it when they saw how fast and aggressive they wanted to play. Obviously, they found a good groove, and I think now they're in a similar boat to some of the other North American teams where they want to be able to cross that finish line, get into the upper echelon of teams at events. They're making events, they just want that extra push, and I think Iconic honestly is a good extra push because he was so strong on M80, and he was the main leadership on that team. So adding him for Hot and Cold, of course you're using consistency, but Dave is also very consistent. Iconic brings so much to a team, and he's also going to bring now a different style of play from M80 coming onto the team.
And he's grown so much as a player.
He has. And the confidence, I mean, you got to say, you can't underestimate how important the hype and the vibes is of having a team like that. And you have Ashen, who's on one side of the spectrum, who's just screaming, getting hype all the time. And then you have Dave on the other side that's very calm, cool, and collected. So it's a nice middle ground with both of them together.
It certainly makes me wonder what the chemistry on that team is like, if they're such polar opposites from one another personality-wise. Will they gel on the server? We are about to find out. They're also coming into this game with some momentum, this season with some momentum, because when they were at the 6th Invitational, they posted a really good win-loss record. They were top 8, and then they had a couple players who we need to specifically highlight because we're hoping hopeful that they'll be able to carry that same performance into this season. It's Ashen and J9O, both of which were stars, even though Space Station couldn't climb as high as we wanted them to.
Yeah, I know last game, I don't want to jinx J9O. Last game I was like, oh, and JR is one of the best players, top 5. I would argue that J9O is also a top 5 player in the NAL right now. I think he's consistent, always putting up numbers. And ever since they've got Ashen, I haven't seen Ashen slip. I haven't seen him make a mistake. More or less, he's very consistent, and his confidence is guiding him through a lot of these situations. To be such a young player and to come to a team and they just feed you the energy and all you have to do is just focus on yourself. I mean, you couldn't imagine a better fulfilling experience for a rookie.
Well, even being that rookie and coming into an already established team with lots of history behind these players, he leads the forefront of that team in terms of ultimate energy and yelling and getting everyone going. And being the rookie and being the player doing that, and you're setting the tempo for the team.
Yeah.
I mean, Ashen is quite the pickup, and I have been so impressed with the way that he's played and the consistency that he's shown. Because I'm a big player on consistency. I don't care how good you were the last game. I don't care how good you were last stage. If you aren't consistent, it's irrelevant to me. And Ashen is the pure definition of consistency.
If he had been on SSG in stage 1, maybe they make a further Copenhagen run. Maybe it means they go further at the Invitational. If there was any NA Rookie of the Year award that we could have given out, Ashen was 100% in that conversation. But let's get into who they're going to be, or they're going to be playing LG, but on what map are we going to? Again, you don't really need to worry about what they did at SI too much. It's a brand new league year. We're going to see Clubhouse for the second consecutive game of the night to end things off. What do we think?
It's a very consistent map. A lot of NA teams love playing Clubhouse. It's a very even playing field where both sides are pretty attacker and they're pretty even for the most part. And when you're playing LG, obviously SSG doesn't have much information on this new LG roster, so you don't want to take them somewhere that's very open and big. You would take them to, let's say, an Oregon or a Clubhouse, and so it makes perfect sense why they would go there. And then, of course, it's a map that lets the players on SSG be able to have fast entries. If you have a fast entry with Ashen or J9O, they're able to walk down the main stairs, walk up the main stairs. They're able to capitalize on these plays.
If you can just play the basic fundamentals of these maps and then have those adaptations, which again, SSG is going to have with not only Iconic and Fultz, that's something that I don't see Luminosity has just yet. So those mid to late round adaptations, I'm really going to be seeing SSG shine specifically in these moments. So I know you're going to ask what the predictions are, and I'm just going to say, SSG.
I mean, dude, he read me like an actual book. Okay, yours is spoken for. SSG?
I think LG shows a lot of potential, but I'm going to have to go with SSG as well.
All right, fair. And Jesse, for his own
hold
part,
on.
he's also
I'm at 75%. No. This is wrong. I am at 75%. Fox got the last one wrong. Jesse should be at like 0, basically.
You're not at 75. Actually, the number should properly be 66.
Okay, well, whatever. I shouldn't be at 50. I should be tied with Jesse. I should be tied with Fox. Jesse, I don't really know what Jesse's doing today. It ain't looking too good.
That's fine. We'll get the actual numbers right in just a second. But everybody across the board doesn't think LG's got it in this matchup. But talk to me real quick. If LG doesn't win here, if they don't win maybe in the next game that they play, is it the world's biggest deal? They're banking on the young guys. If they have a couple slip-ups while they're figuring out new things, if they're not hot right out the gate, not the end of the world for LG, right?
I don't think so. I mean, they have a lot of young players that are just been waiting to get this T1 experience and the cameras on them. And I think we have to wait and see what they can bring to the table. I think a lot of these players haven't played at this level yet. So there's obviously going to be a couple mistakes. And I think, well, I know for a fact that what I want to see from them is being able to keep it close just like they did last season. And if they keep it close, especially with these players compared to last season, I believe that they can scrape away a couple more wins to be able to boost themselves in the total standings at the end of the season.
On the flip side, because Spacestation come in with some momentum, they've got Iconic on the team, if they don't win this game, or if they don't get off to a hot start and establish themselves as a really strong powerhouse in the North American League, is that cause for concern?
I would definitely say it's a cause for concern because Iconic was part of the team that made this playstyle, that made these sort of call-outs, this motion of how the game is played. Now he's just coming back into it, and he's already coming off of an M80 team that already played aggressive and played well-rounded with each other, and now he's just doing it with a team that he's already familiar with.
Sure.
So then the question is, if he can't find that footing, or SSG can't find this footing in this game against a lesser experienced team of LG, that is definitely a cause for concern.
Oh yeah, if they lose today, I know Hot and Cold's going to be sitting at home just evil laughing, just.
Technically, Hot and Cold will be sat there thinking, we didn't lose any games today, and Space Station did, because Beast Coast didn't have to worry about playing their game today. So
That is fair. I mean, I think SSG going into this obviously has to feel confident.
Yeah.
I don't think they're a team that lets overconfidence get the better of them. They constantly say that they don't look at the other team. The other team are gray faces. That's what they look. They're not looking at them. I guarantee you they're not watching the broadcast. They're fully focused, not listening to a single thing, letting outside things get to them.
Well, we're going to jump right back into this bad boy in just a couple of minutes. Are the young guns from LG about to be set ablaze, or are Space Station about to go back to the stars? We'll find out after a short break. Don't go anywhere.
Here a bit quicker than we expected, Sam, not just because of the Beast Coast Mirage game, but the 7-2 the Sonics achieved over Dark Zero has put us at the final game of the day in relatively quick fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, pretty interesting circumstances, but hey, it is what it is. You know, I'm not going to sit here and complain about an early day, all right, Links? I mean, hey, come on. I've only had this champ.
Before I go to bed? Like, that's a good deal.
Hey, oh, wait. Yo, we'll talk to Lax after this. Maybe we get a stack going or something. I don't know. Maybe he's got a PC over there. Anyways, whoa. We're getting way too far ahead of ourselves here. We got LG up against a retooled Space Station with one of my, I'll just call myself out here, personal favorite players in North America. Iconic. Now added back into what was at one moment Astralis' core, right? But now under the SSG banner. So pretty cool.
I was going to say, retooled Space Station isn't retooled if it's just the spiritual successor to Astralis. Is that a retooled Space Station, or is it just kind of a...
Technically,
a
by
core?
definition,
Okay.
yes, but I'm in firm agreement with all of you that, this is not something that should be like, oh my gosh, this is brand new. No, SSG is definitely going to feel right at home with Iconic working his way, and that's all we heard from the analyst desk is just this game right here should go swimmingly for SSG, and if it doesn't, there is definitely something going wrong. So we'll have to see what happens, but I do have one question for you, buddy, before we get too far. We saw SSG getting all excited, all pumped up in the house, right? If you're handed the SSG box, Carter, what are you playing?
If I'm handed if I'm in the shuttle on the way to an arena and I have my speaker cranked to the max, what song am I blaring?
What are you playing?
I'm probably playing one or two. Actually, if I'm in a car with people, probably Disposable Heroes by Metallica.
Okay.
If I'm by myself, the live version of Beastly by Wolfpack, specifically the bass solo, gets me going. But if I'm with people, Disposable Heroes by Metallica.
Yeah, we got two options. Yeah, honestly, that's great. And I was not expecting Metallica out of you. Very good. I would choose Flyest, Highest, Coolest, Smoothest by Key Glock.
Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot to interrupt. I can't believe we're doing this again. All right. I have to address this. So last time I saw Astralis play before SI, these guys changed their names around. And obviously Forest is Forest. Zidane is Iconic because Iconic has been tweeting nothing but Calma on his Twitter for 2 weeks now. And who would Primus be?
You got to do some deduction here.
I do.
Who is it? It's Fultz.
Fultz. Okay.
Come on, man. You forgot Fultz. He's been on the same roster for centuries.
Dude, we're
the guy went from being a child to having a mortgage all on the same team.
We are on game day, and we're changing up team names, our usernames, man.
Dude, somebody get Intero on the line. I know he's
a civilization.
Dude, I swear, you and Intero have to be related, man. You guys get mad about these same exact things. I was just about to say, get Intero on the line. I know he's tilted about this.
I guarantee you, Fultz is going to pop off with a 3K, and guess what I'm going to start to say? I'm going to start to say Primus, and I'm going to look like an idiot. Anyway.
It's prime time, dude.
Fair enough. Prime time for SSG to get a first win of the season, I suppose.
Yes, sir. And, I mean, hey, at least if you're Central Time, it is prime time, baby. It's 8:18 p.m. That's where I like to think the heart of the nation exists, right? Where time mostly matters. But it doesn't. It's West and East. Forest, on over to the East. Speaking of which, moment here. The opening 45. What else do you expect between these two? Also, Forest with the Russian cog. I've been around Forest for a long time. I've watched him play for a long time. I've played against the guy, right? He always is just so weird about the things that he puts on his guns, the way he goes about playing ops sometimes. It's so strange, but he just gets results. Kind of like Silent here. 2 big kills for him as he just moseys around the top floor. Kills off Primus, as well as J9L.
All right, well, that wasn't a great start to SSG's NAL season. It appears, a lot of damage done to the intel economy. Obviously, you see 4 drones left as we are approaching the halfway point of the round. And Solus just running around the top floor. Maybe unread by Jane, I know. Certainly unknown in his position by Fultz, not Primus. And now as a result, we found the Luminosity in a 4v3. SG still a lot of work to do and, well, a lot of force in their way.
Folds, aka Tipu, aka Primus. That's, I don't know if he's got a PhD or anything else, but I'm sure we'll get a list for production at some moment in time. Zidane, though, iconic. That's going to mess with me, too. He's going to go for the hatch here. Ashen going to try and assist with this as well. So just trying to occupy the space here that's been implemented for the impacts. I don't know if another set stuff up. We will be able to try and deal with this. And this is the most straightforward way that you can deal with anybody trying to go for your kitchen hatch. Eventually, just with the way that utility now works for our hard breacher over here, things aren't going to work out the best up against the X-Kairos of Habana, just because she does have so many of those things. Yeah, I'm down to that format of 2 now. But either way, this is going to force SSG into a pretty precarious scenario. They got 3 people remaining. They're going to have to try and force themselves in through a few of these angles now.
It's going to be difficult, especially down blue, even with the death mark tracker finding that lesion. So active intel, at least for Deimos, on this defender's position. And a Z ping on the player AKs, but Forrest immediately dies. The kitchen player immediately dies as well. And Ashen only gets 1 for his troubles before being finished off by Luminosity. Definitely probably one of the worst starts you could have potentially foreseen for SSG that round, as the roam clear collapses in spectacular fashion, and then the utility clear on site fails.
Yeah, not exactly the best way to start things off. Wow, Fultz's plan? I had no idea. Anyways, yeah, so Space Station just right off rip, just completely losing the plot, especially on the positioning from what I believe was Silent over there on the master side, able to get 2 quick, clean kills. And that's what set the precedent for round 1. SSG didn't really have the ability to try and put it all on black again and try and make a bet, see what they can get out of it. They're not in a scenario to try and go for any of that. So instead, they have to try and be very safe, very precautionary moving into the last half of the round. And that makes it where Luminosity can just rest on their earlier success. They don't really have to do all that much, Carter. SSG has to come to them. That's the beauty of the defense. They peel things back in an appropriate manner, force SSG into a terrible scenario, and find success because of that.
Won't have the Solus this round, so maybe damage done to SSG's drone economy might not manifest again, now that you don't have that Spectro scanner, making it difficult to acquire any info in the prep phase at all, but then also difficult to clear out that roam later on, as anybody from SSG spotted. Spawn peak blue stairs. 1 fly by, and the second also flies by, unanswered by the player playing inside a secret. Zara, I do believe. Pixera, yes, indeed it is. Go back off. Nobody from SSG really the wiser or really cares whatsoever.
Oh, well, it's going to be dealing with the construction single panel. Just making a line of sight, and that's about it. More than likely, all they're going to need on that area is you can actually hold the construction single going towards master with an angle that they just made like that. So be able to more than likely dedicate somebody to that later on into the round. This is something you want to do really, really early on, ladies and gents, just because it makes it to where the defense, they kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? Like, as you sit there and stare at things for so very long, eventually that angle just kind of exists in the back of your mind. You're like, all right, nobody's been here for a while, but you got to make sure that when it does get down to those hotly contested moments that you are aware of a scenario like that. And man, LG getting away with one again onto Forest.
Yeah,
King of building scenarios like this one.
I mean, this is the concern with that I had about this LG roster, Sam, right? Is that, say we will about how coordinated this roster is going to be, but you have a lot of very mechanically talented players. Top to bottom, Eddie, Hat, Kixro, Silent, Wi-Fi, and any team in T2 could be the gunner on that team. Wi-Fi in particular has really started to make a comeback in the past couple months. And now that Hat and Silent are fallen, more experienced, coordinated team seems to be fighting back. They found the players playing inside a cache, made it the 4v3, and now it's the remaining anchors for Luminosity need to step up to the plate.
LG have at least gotten it down to the last minute. As we know from Space Station, they are not aliens to the situation at all. We're moving Iconic across this basement floor. Oh, very close. Could have had Kixera. They'll be moving his way down here. Xro, not discovered just yet. Remember, folks, they are at home, so This audio going to be a little bit easier to utilize into their advantage here. Nitro sell out. That should give up the goods. Iconic still has no idea, and neither does Kicks. Skeleton key out, and Iconic loses it to Kicks on the pre-fire. Oh my! The MPX Kicks, he finally gets gunned down from a position that you thought would have had some abuse earlier on in that scenario. But either way, SSG, they found a way into this round. Eddie will take down one. Let me not try and speak things into existence too quickly here for Space Station. As fortunately enough, Ashen does exist. And he's been here once or twice too. He'll clean up the round for Space Station, and thank God for SSG's sake.
Thank God indeed, because you have Hat just swinging the plat wall breach, it seems, or swinging Garage, getting the opening pick. He's able to fall back into cash successfully, and you're like, oh God, is this how we're going to start the roam clear? This is how we're going to start round two? But then they have the crossfires they need to get that advantage back, because there are two players cash and construction. They're able to open up a hole from the construction window into cash itself, and they still have the player Garage. So if he tries to rotate through the condor, there's two different angles set up to deal with that position, and also to deal with the player next to him inside of cash and con as well. S can get the 4v3 back, and then one of the rounds of all time happens there afterwards, especially with that unfortunate miss out with Iconic inside a bathroom, but that happens, and even though it's down to a 1v1, SSG still has some good coordination to bring that man advantage back, and creating enough of a buffer that when it gets to a 1v1, they're in the advantage and can close out their first attacking run.
Well, depending on how this goes, Iconic might have his tag back next next game. He's like, I think it was a little bit of miscalculation, a little lucky scenario there, maybe a Horcrux or something that he's bringing to bear. But I mean, as of right now, 0-2, not exactly the greatest start. But I mean, at the end of the day, who the hell cares? It's 1-1. You don't really pay attention to stat lines like that when you're in game, anyways. It's like, two scenarios that didn't really work out for me. We're just going to continue keeping them on. So we'll see what they can do with round 3. They've at least gotten one over on Luminosity's defense here, but so far these defenses have not exactly looked hot.
No, I mean, what's looked hot is Luminosity. Like the players, the gunfights they're taking, they're looking confident, they're hitting their shots. Even though they lost that round, it was still very close, and they were able to get aggressive and catch SSG off guard. And if SSG, like maybe DZ, are coming into this a little cold, a little under the weather in terms of their play, that can be enough to win in the best of one. That could be enough to get you the W, especially when Hat literally had success swinging this very position, flat wall, the round prior. Maybe he's able to pull it off again. Maybe it also will be boosted by Kixro, bringing back that Solus from round 1 that did such damage to SSG's drone economy. There are a lot of bright points for Luminosity that are made even better by the fact that in the past 2 rounds, these players are playing confidently, and they're hitting their shots.
Space Station, give the respect it's due over to Luminosity. Scar's been touching on very mechanically gifted squad. And I mean, you can see that from every single POV that we skip across for LG. They're constantly checking these angles, just constant shoulder work as well. Very good stuff. This is the kind of stuff that you want to try and implement into your own play when it comes to Siege. Maybe not as frantically some of these players, as they more likely have a little bit more in the tank than some of us nowadays, eh? But either way, X making the most of this situation, kind of shows space over here towards the bar side, looking like he wants to try and play around with the player in stock. A couple extra shots headed that way, but gonna get Ashen to try and sweep in just yet. They know there's a player in construction. A beautiful moment there from Eddie. Catches Ashen on timing, and not only that, but Wi-Fi finds a kill of his own as Luminosity looks to take round 3.
This is what I mean. Luminosity just swing the Condor, take down the Capitao, swinging in that very position. Same with Forest. Luminosity just aren't afraid of taking fights, aren't afraid of being in that position where you might take a gunfight, you could lose. They don't have that in their minds. They feel that they can win it. And as Iconic has to fight back in the 5v3, does find a player inside of the site, it's something about con pushes today, man. Nobody wants to take Garage, even with the Capitao on the board. And it's the same reality we've seen every time it's happened. Garage is still a factor. It gets 2 kills. Luminosity get their second round on the board. It's only a 2-1, but the way these rounds are going, it could very well be 3-0 for LG.
Most definitely. And I think the thing that is befuddling SSG right now is just this pacing out of the defense, right? they're catching them off guard at some very pivotal moments where Space Station are practically caught with their pants down, Carter. I mean, we got utility in hand, we got people sprinting. I just think it's a respect that SSG is expecting out of LG isn't there, and they're using that to its fullest advantage as they're able to swing through on multiple different instances and get a whole swath of kills. And that's not something that you expect, especially out of this SSG roster. I mean, yeah, obviously it's their first game with Iconic, don't get us wrong. But I mean, you look across the names on this team and you're just like, all right, shooter after shooter after shooter, just stack them, you know, head height. But LG so far, they have done a great job of lopping these heads off the Space Station.
Hat especially able to get aggressive so consistently, but Silent leading the way for.
Doesn't get the shiesty on and he's that aggressive, man. It's crazy.
He's got the facial hair now. Actually, he's a grown boy, grown man. Got the goatee. I saw it. I saw the player photo. He's trying to feel a bit more mature, I suppose. But Luminosity keeping the young guns and the youth alive. Hopefully, we'll do the same going into round 4. It's a mirror setup on the site, and actually a lot of operators and utility mainly focused at anchoring, instead of necessarily going for these crazy roams.
SSG. Gotta put their foot in round 4. All extra spice from them. Gonna have Ashen moving in on this top floor. Got the skeleton key too. Likely gonna be trying to deal some solid damage to the flooring in the kitchen hallway, as well as kitchen in general. Have the secondary hard breach as well, so more likely going to be the man dedicated to at least get one hatch. We have hope on it too. A lot of redundancy here for Space Station, but you can do that in the modern day of Siege. Makes life a lot harder, and you can just see that across the board for Space Station. Honestly, completely went over the ace there on top of that. So this allows for an offensive unit to get a little bit more aggressive than you typically have to be, Carter. It makes it to where all of the players are kind of free to do what they want, all minus Forest. You might need those impact, right? You might want your Monty to stay alive for something like execution. So besides that, everybody else kind of freed up to do what is necessary for them to try and some of these moments to go their way.
A lot of moments that could be found, especially right here. You can see Bolts almost finding the right angle. It's too tight. He sees it again, puts Wi-Fi down to 1 HP, but the impact trick still working a little bit. Doesn't find all of the Selma. Part of that church wall will open up. Already on the opposite side in blue. Also starting to land. It has to fight through some magnets. It will find a key player in blue, but importantly, it doesn't find the other player. Tucked inside a generator. Force has worked his way in. Just ADS's as Hat decides to walk back in front of the engagement, and the bomb's going down. The diffuser on the floor with no contention by Luminosity, despite a lot of the utility still being in play and a lot of the positions still being held. Force has just bull rushed into Wi-Fi, put him flat on his back. Now Kixro must retake from the dirt position. Monty relays that bit of intel to his team, and everyone can play passive and hold their angles. SSG with a very solid round. Honestly, the first real win we've seen from this squad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That looked like the very first real Space Station round that we had here. And, you know, might be some of these earlier cracks just starting to show as they're trying to surely seal those up. You know, just because it's one player doesn't mean things aren't difficult, even with vast knowledge of each other, right? And a couple of things you still got to learn, a couple creases that you're going to have to try and iron out. And you're seeing that actively in front of your face, folks. I mean, at maximum, I mean, what have they had to scrim? Maybe a month and some change. So it's just one of those things where you're going to have to try and do the most with what you have at your disposal currently. And SSG, they've at least been able to muster 2 rounds, making it to where their defenses are going to be a heck of a lot easier, even if they don't pick up another offensive round.
2-4-1/2 on Clubhouse attack. I mean, I will say the meta is not at the start of SI, it seemed a bit worrying. It's not become this, I would say, defender-sided, you know, Lamai Jaeger nightmare that we used to have. But it is still one where getting as many attacks as you can, especially with the changes that happened going into SI, now going into this stage, especially with those ADS changes and now being slower to take a lot of these gunfights. It's a big adjustment, especially for a side that inherently has to set the pace, has to fight back. That's what the defense is doing. So, see what they're able to muster. Move on to gym bedroom upstairs, as Luminosity are deciding anchoring might be for Church Arsenal. Gym and bedroom, gotta hold cash.
Anchoring's for babies. Luminosity's no babies. gonna hold things down over on cash side. Like the adjustments we're seeing from the SSG lineup as well. Get Forrest onto the Doke, some extra info here to try and back up some of these gunfights. They don't really need a lot of hard breach for a scenario like this, so makes it to where they can kind of go over to greener pastures for the main utilities. That does include the Doke, as we've seen her constantly used and banned across the last handful of months here, Rainbow Six. Well, Primus, or I, oh my goodness gracious, or Fultz is going to go down. It's going to be Wi-Fi with the Nitro cell that will take him out as well. And SSG, back to basics. Back to trying to figure out exactly how they want to go about this with no thermite.
You got the ace at least, and to be fair, I mean, Fultz has opened up Jacuzzi wall, which if I'm seeing a thermite die early on, that's my big concern, is he hasn't done a lot of the work he needs to. So it's not as bad as it could be, to be fair. And Jano still has a lot of hard breach left over. So if there's any time to lose a thermite, I suppose it's after the hard breaching's been done, but this is still where SSG were really stuck, at least the mid-round. They were able to get 2 subsequent kills to make it a 4v3 from Metalbound.
Ashen on Ash with the Cog. 2 kills from what I can only assume is him killing people through the construction panel off of that window. And yes, indeed, I think that's exactly what happened. They had some pressure underneath as well, but I don't think that got there until a little bit later on. So, I mean, a tip of the cap to Ashen. He's completely turned round 5 on its head. It looked like Luminosity's round to lose. They had gotten so much done. Even with that breach going the way of SSG, it was still going to be a pretty tough task to try and get round 5 to come back into their graces. And so far, it's looking like it can do exactly that. 37 seconds remaining now. SSG looking to try and garner this round off the back of some pretty creative kills.
Eddie's able to swing the Jacuzzi breach, find one on Ashen, and this is honestly a winnable position. 1 player outside Gym, 1 player inside of Cash, and another, I think, all the way outside of Garage. Yeah, going on the rappel. We've got 18 seconds left, and SSG are still getting in position. This is winnable for Eddie and Wi-Fi if they can just find the right angles. Cuts down Forrest. The flash doesn't even blind him. He's able to switch over to Jim, and even with the shotgun, Iconic falls to a frost mat. But Jane, I know, so clutch in the end up being 1v1. Brings a round back from SSG that seemed it might just be stolen away by Luminosity.
And right there, those moments that separate veterans from some newfound talent. SSG and J9O especially there with that clutch, but something you just really never would want the LG player to try and give up. That last angle there as he stepped up. It's very unfortunate circumstances, especially with how quickly J9O was able to snap back into place and pick up that frag. Not exactly a lot of decision making he could make there at the end of the day, but either way, really hard fought there for LG, and not to be able to come up with the round is definitely gutting for them. Space Station, although in the lead right now, it's not exactly great, is it? Space Station not looking like their exact selves from what we saw with Hot and Cold implemented, but what else would you expect? Again, we do have a new player coming in the likes of Iconic, but even with that being said, just a couple of things that you would expect to kind of go their way. Some of these earlier clear moments, some of these moments of teamwork that just aren't exactly bringing any fruit to bear.
I gotta say, a bit of a curious timeout from LG. Last round of their defenses before we get to the attacking half, and I mean, the worst they can get at this point is a 4-2, and they decide to burn the timeout in round 6. Now, this isn't me saying that there aren't issues worth talking about, because I'm sure there are. Can't hear the comms, but Wave can. But still, bit of an odd choice, especially when if you end up getting maybe the 4-2, and then you go down 5-2, you don't have attack timeout anymore. So, bit of a weird choice, but we will see it move into a tech pause. So, still plenty of time, at least for both these teams, to marinate, stew upon the rounds they've just seen. Because as you said, it has not been a clean game for SSG by any stretch of the imagination. 2 times now, these rounds have 2 of the rounds they've won have come down to 1v1s on Gym and Bedroom. And while their other win was very strong, very dominant on Church Arsenal, it has been a series of close rounds or very solid LG wins.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that's the biggest thing right now for me for Space Station is really the only round that I can think of as fully successful, something that is hopefully the future of Space Station, what we see out of them, was that basement assault with the Monty, where they were able to get that plant down so very easily. convert that over after getting some pretty nice kills in the back end of things. But past that, it really hasn't boded too well for Space Station, has it? In fact, it's made Luminosity look pretty darn good.
It certainly speaks to the mechanical skill of all these players and the coordination as well, don't get me wrong, but the big thing I'm still seeing is the confidence they're bringing. They don't have any fear when they're taking these engagements, and once teams are wise to that, it might change. I mean, somebody's got to play LG first, somebody's got to be on the receiving end of it first, and take some time to adapt to it in round, and the teams in maybe week 4, week 5 will be a bit more weary of it. But it's still something that you have to worry about at peaking Silent or you're peaking Wi-Fi, really anybody on this roster. It's not a guaranteed win, that they might catch you completely off guard, and you can't assume anything. Assume nothing's clear, assume nothing is safe. Play careful, play patient.
Well, back in for round 6, aren't we? Luminosity took the timeout over to attack pause as well, so they have had more than enough time to discuss what this round is going to look like. So I don't know if you've noticed, but the majority of SSG all using that run cog, by the way. I don't know what's in the water over there, but it's got to be something. That's just not routine. So but Luminosity, specifically for Eddie's sense, going to be holding things down over inside of stock for a moment. I don't know if he's peeled off just yet, but he will have a few SSG players in the neighborhood. We'll try and persist here as well. Just have Wi-Fi as well as Kicks, and I think an additional player on that top floor there with Kicks route. See what SSG want to try and do about this roam that they have extended. Already 1 minute off the board here for SSG to use, so gotta get a move on.
5 drones as well, in a bit of a situation where if you burn any more on this clear, as another one falls to Kicks Rose T5. Could face a lot of problems, but Ashen thinks he's found a gap. Ashen has found dirt is clear. SSG have likely read just how many roamers there are on that top floor. Now the Maestro's aware too, spots the drone flying through dirt. J90 falls, so Luminosity have the man advantage. And LG are aware that SSG might try to go for a dirt push, so for now SSG are pushed back, and LG actually aware of that.
Oh, what a moment here for Kicks. And up top in logistics, beautiful find there from Hat. Luminosity, they have every means necessary to be able to win this round. LG, they've outstratted Space Station. This entire roam setup, it works so unbelievably well. SSG not having the info, not having the coordination to be able to try and solve these problems, especially that player upstairs inside of logistics. Kicks got to exist for an unprecedented amount of time. Not only that, but he catches one of the most pivotal players in these dying moments, falling down the hatch with the case in hand. This is more than likely going to be the round. Forrest, I mean, he's a damn good player, don't get me wrong, but a 1v3 situation like this will shut me up at least, but won't be silent for long, as it's going to be Wi-Fi's funeral here, getting sent over Forrest's way to be able to take that player down. Hopefully Wi-Fi is wearing all black to that one, as LG will be able to pick up the round and tie things up on their defenses.
Honestly, could that be a 5-1 half? The 1v1 victories aside for SSG that separate the 3-3 we have from the 5-1 we could have had favoring LG. LG have just looked more consistently present throughout these rounds. Look to those Church Arsenal rounds, ignoring the Monty push, which was admittedly quite good. Don't get me wrong. But look at those Church Arsenal rounds. When they have to go for that roam clear, SSG are losing most of their drones, burning most of their time, and getting very little control. When Ashen even thinks he's found a gap, LG are also not just complete bots so focused on the roam, they've ignored the site. You have the Maestro there. Edian sees the drone come through dirt and is then anticipating Ashen to push into the bomb site. LG are playing intelligently. They know their strat, they know their weaknesses, and they're creating ways to counter it. SSG's droning that half was quite poor. Their clears on basement were not very good. And aside from those two 1v1s, LG would have the fact that I think they've been the better team this game represented in round count.
Yeah, 100%. I will say this, especially for LG's sake, you know, this has not been something where it's like, oh, you know, they're just a bunch of ranked players slapped together, running around killing people. Like, no, this is well done. Yeah, this is well done. They've got chemistry. They have a great understanding of what fundamentally you want control of, what you want to try and do to the map here on Clubhouse. And they're able to use that to the nth degree and really make some of these moments shine through for themselves as they're able to catch SSG off guard. And honestly, some moments where you might not see aggression out of a lot of other teams. And once again, we're going to have Luminosity, of all people, leading this off. It's going to be Ashen to go down. The saving grace, you could say, for Space Station on that offensive side.
Saving grace 10-6 so far. I mean, single-handedly opening up pushes out for that second gym bedroom attack. Losing him, I mean, his utility, as often is the case on Fenrir, will still do a lot of talking. Depending on how many codes he's used, a lot of those F-Nauts could still be activated, and that'll be a big problem for LG as they try to push in through doorways. There is also a solid setup for SSG to still fall back on. They've got this con shield. The con wall is fully reinforced and electrified, so there is work that Luminosity has to do before they make it. Selma's now on, so that work has basically been accomplished in the time it took me to talk about it. And now Fultz's position, excuse me, is a bit more difficult.
Halfway through round, LG, solid consideration over towards the construction side, which makes a question. When are we working things into the balcony? Wi-Fi's going to answer that immediately. Going to attend a few more funerals and see if he can line those up. And Volt's going to be forced to go down first, and actually he'll be, I almost said iconic. It's going to be Bolts that gets that kill there instead. Going to see if he can try and assist his teammate. He'll at least find one. Recognize now that he shut things down. There's no Claymore on this window! There's no way! Out of all the things you'd think you wouldn't have to worry about, especially with so many people that have that kind of option, LG get completely blown out of the water by a construction single hop?
Just
LG! Oh, this offense was looking so good too, Carter.
It was looking quite good, but now maybe he can bring it back. Checking Logi, but there's no intel. Spots one beautiful flick, a quad kill, but no, nothing to accomplish. LG so close to bringing that back, but no Claymore and nobody watching con window despite two people on metal balcony. Gives the round to Space Station. Again, a round that started off so good for LG with that opening pick, but somehow SSG find a way back in.
That's just so unfortunate. And you could literally see the thought process there from Fultz, right before that moment. He looked at the window and he's like, do I try it? They might have Claymored this. There is a chance that they did whilst I was off attending to other things. And, you know, I'm just going to risk it for the biscuit. And instead he gets 2 biscuits, which is like, you never really expect that one, do you?
No, you don't expect 2 biscuits. I'm a 1 biscuit kind of guy, so I was surprised by it as well, and Fultz clearly will take it and move on. Nice 3K, I think quad K, or quad K.
I mean, hey, fair enough.
4K for Fultz in round 7.
I like quad K. We're actually working that one in.
I'll take it. You know, we'll make it work. After that gym bedroom win, they'll move down to Church Arsenal. It seems with that Valkyrie, we'll see a bit of a loose roam, especially with the barricades over in bathroom and billiards. Yeah, they're gonna at least hold the bar position, not necessarily for long, because all we've got is 2 barricades and some bout cams, but still, might try to play around here for maybe the first one.
I figured we'd have them peel back. I was just waiting to see what the answer was here for SSG and exactly what they wanted to do here. Just didn't really have anything going on the mid floor or the upper level. And I mean, especially in competitive play when you're playing against players as lethal as these LG players, you do not want to give them something as simple as just roam her off on their own with really no utility to lean on. It'll likely just be a free kill to them at the end of the day. Not something that SSG wants to give over. And Luminosity, look at how quick they're processing this, Carter. All these drones, all this early info working its way in so very swimmingly. I mean, not even a minute off the board. Kix is already setting up angles for main stairs. This is beautiful. I mean, if you're the coach of LG right now, you got a tear in your eye. Except for that. There's a black eye cam staring you in the face. There's a mole, and it's staring me in the face.
Well, I mean, you know, it can't be perfect.
We're not supposed to talk about the mole, Carter, but it's did he get it? Is it still there? Am I also blind? No, it's on the sign. I see it. I see it with my eyes.
Well, unfortunately, he doesn't. So he'll just have to sit in bar, not knowing that there's direct intel on him. But there's not much, I mean, there's not much SCP can do about it right now. Hatch is reinforced, opening it up. They can continuously relay intel here, but, like, I mean, what are they going to do?
Well, I already stole something earlier. I'm stealing that one too. That's also robbed. Just straight up, verbatim, bar for bar, do not care. That's insane. And the craziest thing about that too is that Valcom, I even knew it was there. I still didn't see it. And it's as clear as day. It's just sitting out on this sign. But I mean, it's very, very difficult to actually try and get a read on that dang thing. So what a camera there from Space Station. They got a whole read on what Luminosity is doing on this mid-level. Yeah, you can't really see what's obviously happening over at the kitchen end of things, but great audio going over for main too. So they more than likely know that Kix is down here. Do they? Ooh.
Well, you have to hope they do, especially now that he's starting to flirt with an engagement down a long main hallway. A couple direct intel on players playing behind the mirror window, so we'll see how the blue push works out. Forrest at least gets the first pick, and as the C4 flies out, it lands right at Kixer's feet, cuts him down. Kitchen hatch drop? Yeah, not today, unfortunately. Blue push? Not a big fan of it either. Can Hat somehow recover the round in what was a 1v5? Basically, when he got that kill on 1 HP? No, I don't think so, especially as Janino is waiting for him to open up Ashwall and sever his head the moment it occurred.
5-3 in favor of Space Station. And I mean, ever since we've swapped sides, completely different game. What else can you expect? It is Clubhouse at the end of the day. Mark said something earlier, and I think it's a great way to think about things, especially when maps are so unbelievably defensive oriented, right? It's not how great you play defense on a map like Clubhouse, on a map like Oregon. It's how good can you attack? How good are you at offense in these rounds that are so unbelievably pivotal to your success, where you need, at a bare minimum, 2 rounds? It might seem like the easiest thing ever, but I can, assure you, friend, rest assured, it most definitely is not, especially when a team is very solid on their defenses, like we're seeing out of SSG right here. The beauty of a situation like this, especially when you're a roster that is going through some changes, right, and trying out some new things, I'm sure. The beauty of a scenario like that is when you're on defense, you know the game plan, Carter. You're the one setting the damn thing up. The offense is the one that's got to figure it out, drone things out, try and figure out exactly what you've implemented. Space Station knows what routinely happens when they go for a setup like this. You're just much more at home. And so far, that's exactly what SSG's looked like on Dub House.
Also comes down to, I think, inexperience. You see, okay, how are we going to convert this advantage we've gained, at least in terms of control? Sure, there's the cam on them and bar, whatever. It is important, but we talked about it. How are they going to convert it? LG starts struggling there. It's often to get that hurdle from rookie to experience, newbie to veteran. That's often where those problems happen, is that late round. CCTV and cash, maybe the problems won't be as big here. I mean, I say that, but then again, I've always talked about, all right, we just saw a calm push, but it won't happen again, and it's the only push you've actually seen on this calm side. But look at that. I can't believe it. Opened up flat wall, and we got a Capitao in bottom garage. We are so back.
LG doing it too. It's something you
It's
really
shot
wouldn't expect.
iconic.
And it's successful. Mind blown here. Is Ashen 3.0 KD trying to add to it too. He knows that everybody and their brother is inside of garage right now. He's a little worried about it. Nice angles added here from J90, but this is usual suspect when it comes down to things. So more likely going to be sussed out by LG. We'll have to see how it goes. It's going to be J90 actually taking down Silent. He doesn't check for that top angle. He's immediately punished for it. Ashen's worked his way back into the tail end of sight. And now, with 1 minute and 40 seconds remaining, folks, we got a 3 versus 3. We're in a dead heat with 4 drones up. A lot of dead people can try and watch for the offensive side.
This is the problem, though, is that LG still have garage control. Like, great, it's a 3v3, That's got a chance for SG to come back. They've got 3 toxic canisters in the C4. But LG, on paper, have 1 minute and 20 seconds to bait out that utility. And also, if they send someone down to deny lounge control, it'll be difficult, but you could maybe get away with having somebody solo cover inside a garage. That's a bit more of a risky play. There's still a lot of time for LG to work with, but how will they make use of it? If they are this more inexperienced roster, how are they going to take this time to make this 3v3 either a 3v2 or a post plant that SSG simply cannot beat? Eddie falling on the opposite side of the map is not how I would say would be a successful start to that. Hat falling soon after, not with diffuser, but still the only player to cover Wi-Fi again. Not how I would describe that as a winnable round. C4 ripped. Wi-Fi's able to cut down Ashen. Maybe the Bandit? No, not even for a 6-3 for SSG. Match point, Unfortunately, strong early round, but a poor late for LG.
That was perfect from Spacestation. That was just a insane understanding of what could potentially go on for an answer to that 3 versus 3. SSG don't turtle up on site in a way that makes it to where they can't try and capitalize on what Luminosity is going to do next. Instead, they keep 2 players around that area, both of the players, mind you, that had great stoppage utility. You've got Smoke, you've got Bandit with that Nitro cell. What do they do with the oddball, though, Carter? They push them on over to the master side. You want to know why? Well, because there's some potential that Luminosity tries to either A, work in a construction take, because that whole other area could just be pseudo pressure at the end of the day. You really don't know. They've gotten the default. The camera really isn't there. You're kind of just flying by the seat of your pants in a situation like this, right? Or they could just try and have that cloak and dagger play, get some things going on that front side, get something like a plant with somebody holding plat wall, right? And then have the thermite work their way in. As that's going down, everybody's distracted, and he gets those big kills side of Cash. SSG thought of absolutely every scenario that could have taken place, and they did the simple thing of just making sure that somebody was over there to play off of the info. They didn't even have to get the kill, Carter. They just had to know that the guy was coming, and he went that extra mile, and he was able to take down Eddie, making it to where they have had a perfect set of defenses so far ever since switching sides.
And this is where I think I criticized SSG's attack perhaps. It was very imperfect that LG could have got a 5-1.
Most definitely. I will stand right there 10 toes with you.
Yeah, but I mean, right there, SSG know how to play that 3v3. They know what to anticipate. They know how to make those adaptations, and we see that experience, see that knowledge, and that kickoff really setting those defenses apart from Luminosity's attacks. And in a best of 1, you can get that 3-3. That can matter. That can be the difference maker by the end of the day. Luminosity started well in a lot of these, though, to be fair. And it's no different here. Flat wall opened very early on a gym bedroom attack. You want to see this. You don't want to see them stall out right at the beginning. But 2 different players at the moment, all inside of Cash or on top of red stairs, to stop this very push. How are LG going to coordinate and clear this position and find these players?
Someone is up here on the hard wall and create that angle so they can try and with the cross coming in from Cash. Why that pants reinforced in the first place for SSG. They're like, oh yeah, you want that angle? Well, oh no! Oh, hat! He's lost the plot. He's lost his hat. Remus, aka Fulty-Poo, aka Fultz. For the huge moment there. The angle even working against him, and he still wins the gunfight. Beautiful moment there from him. Now SSG looking to try and back this up, work their way back to site. They've given up the goods to LG, though, at least for the Cash side of things, but able to at least maintain equal man advantage in this, especially going on in the last minute, completely palatable for Spacestation's defense.
Making this not necessarily easy, but with flat wall not opened up, very difficult. Forest ready for the bandit trick, and they put it in the middle of the wall. That should be able to get the exothermic no matter what, and yes, indeed. It simply does not matter. A rookie mistake. But another example of SSG ready for all that LG could throw at them. Ready, still have the bandit in position in case they open Jacuzzi. Now LG have to vault in, but with nobody able to deny the angles on the bedroom window. Users recovered, but the round is all but lost. GG comes out. Might have been a poor first half from SSG, but on these defenses, Jim, Church, CC, Jim again. It has worked out swimmingly. Kicks will just hold out on the metal balcony. Wait out these final 5 seconds. No KD saving a Pro League game, man.
Oh,
Send it in.
Do it.
Be honorable.
Make sure those stats look good, baby. Hell yeah. No way. Stop it. Stop it right now.
Shut
Oh
up.
my God.
I'm
Yo, somebody's got to hit the blue steel. If I don't see a blue steel out of these 3 people, I'm over it.
You didn't notice it. Iconic, Forest, and Fultz had all put on the same sunglasses. I thought that's what it was.
No, most definitely. Oh, wait, hold on. We got one that's late to the party. Ashen's already wearing glasses. I don't know if he's about to double up or not, but I mean, hey, great stuff, and specifically a great game out of Ashen. Yeah, he wasn't lighting up the scoreboard as much when we got over to the defensive end of things, but my God, man, he put them well within the ballpark on offense, didn't he?
He did, and honestly, for SSG, That's not exactly what I expected. I was honestly hoping for maybe a closer of a game, given what LG shown on their defensive half. But like, that's not unexpected, that kind of end result. You know, we see LG, the newer team, you know, at least for Wi-Fi, for example, first game in Pro League, the defense is where they're confident, right? You don't have to make opportunities. The attack telegraphs their position a bit. You can swing, you can get aggressive. That's where we see a lot of those younger teams make these huge, crazy starts. Then when you get to the attack and you have to have that coordination, you have to have that consistency, that's where the younger teams struggle and where the big dogs tend to.
Yeah, no, that's right on the nail, my friend. And, you know, I'm happy for SSG, especially. You know, it's a huge change here with Iconic coming in. You don't really have that same backbone that you once did with Hot and Cold there. But, I mean, even with Iconic not lighting the world on fire, they still looked really, really solid, especially when it came down to those defenses. But, I mean, one thing does have to be said for LG, though, before I toss it over back to you, my friend. LG, honestly, all things considered, they looked really, really good. I mean, Clubhouse defense, although, yeah, very defensive-oriented map, right? I mean, it's still difficult to try and hold these things down up against a squad that is so very capable. So, tip of the cap to LG for standing toe-to-toe with these big dogs and able to land a few blows.
Yeah, tip of the cap to LG. Congrats to SSG, but that's it for Sam and I today. But we're not done yet. We still have a break, but then the desk after to break down LG versus SSG.
As it turns out, if you get the boys back together, sometimes magic does occur. It happens at all stages of life, but when you know what that one core group of friends means to you and how well you do when you're all together in the same place, then everything just seems like it falls into place. Spacestation defeat LG in our final game of day number 1 by a 7-3 scoreline on Clubhouse, and even though LG gave them a really good fight in that first half, they didn't win a single round in that second half of that game.
I mean, the boys are back in town. That's the best way to put it. It looked like a pretty solid performance, but that's nothing to take away from LG, though. I mean, this is a roster that we said they're familiar with each other. They know what it's like, and they were displaying it. Me and you were talking about back there. They were playing like a new LG, obviously, than what we saw from the last stage. And I love seeing the plays from these guys. And Vox was specifically, I mean, I'll let you take this because you were making a point that they were playing that trade game.
Yeah, the trade game was really good every round, besides this one right here with Forrest on Monty. Every round, LG kept it very close, and that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see them bringing the rounds back. Obviously, every round was coming to a 3v3, even a 1v1. There were so many 1v1s that we saw. We saw an amazing J90 2v1. And that leads me into my next point, that SSG, regardless of how the rounds ended or how they kept in the round, I felt like were kept getting bailed out by amazing individual big plays. And I don't want to say that was just luck. They were playing late game because they knew that LG lacked experience, and SSG wanted to focus on forcing them to have the pressure of the time against them, and that's when the big plays was able to come out. We saw so many individual big plays from every single player on SSG, and obviously one side swapped. That's when we saw everything take a turn for the worse when it came to LG. SSG just ran away with it.
So LG can play trades really well. That's a plus, and we can take that little nugget of knowledge with us through the rest of the season. But how much did this Space Station look like that old Astralis core, where hero plays sometimes felt like it was baked into their DNA? Was that kind of a lot of what we saw here?
It was great, especially when you're on attack. It's very difficult, especially in the current meta, to get these attack rounds. It's going to come down to those 1v1s and the 2v2s. And when you have playmakers that are able to show out when the time arrives, that obviously makes things a lot easier. And then once they got to defense, playmaking was all a part of their strat. Every single round, regardless of who was up, who was down, you would see SSG come down, slow down, play in the positions that they would need, behind the utility that they would need, force LG to go for these executes, and then as soon as LG would go for it, that was lights out. SSG just shut them down.
And we talk about the inexperience versus experience. I mean, on that sheet right there that we just saw, that slide, it was showing that SSG was actually down in the opening entry engagements. But because of the trade game, because of the experience that SSG has, just because you fall in a man disadvantage, when you have that experience, you're able to turn that disadvantage into an advantage and really be able to single out players, single out positions, and really turn a lot of those rounds more into your favor. And a round specifically was round 8, that server cash where SSG, all of LG took everything they needed. They took Garage, they took the balcony control. But then they immediately fell off of it. You saw, I believe it was Ashen, you saw J9, and I believe Forrest just holding down the site, and they were using the util, they were using the smokes, they were using the C4s, and forcing LG out of every possible position. And that's where it comes into inexperience versus experience. Is LG, I mean, SSG wasn't in the best position, but they were able to work with the map and force LG into non-winnable positions.
SSG always had an answer, and you could argue that, you know, even with the lack of information that they had on LG, it was all about what the execute was coming.
Yeah.
For hero plays for Space Station, everyone had their own. Sometimes it was Ashen, sometimes it was Fultz, sometimes it was J9, but Ashen just feels like we can't stop talking about what he contributes every game. He lights out today.
And I said this, like, Ashen is the rookie of the year, the century, whatever you want to call it. Ashen is such a standout player. And again, him being the youngest, the one with the least experience on the roster, but not only coming in being the voice, being the energy, being all of that, but then putting up the performance and display of skill that he has. And again, the consistency across the board from him, there's nothing that you can't go against Ashen. He is a constant performer, and coming out to this first stage, being a brand new team of bringing in Iconic, nothing has changed. He is still doing the Ashen things that we all know and love, and beginning to love from him.
And you see a lot of young players get into the scene and they put up amazing numbers in their first stage, or they do phenomenally well at these big events, and then they come back and maybe they stop putting in the effort. They think, oh, I'm the GOAT, I'm the best, I can just not try as hard. But that isn't the case with Ashen. His motivation and his mentality is what I believe leads him to be so strong. And being in an environment where everybody is constantly positive towards him, saying, try it. If you see an opportunity, try it. It's able to make such a free-flowing form for Ashen to just be able to continue adapting and growing as a player.
This also happened in a game where Iconic was 1-6. We didn't
really
even
are
have
a bad curse.
We didn't even have no. At no point today were we thinking, oh, hey, Iconic is going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard with like the worst performance overall. It doesn't matter because of how well everybody else.
And I've said this 1,000 times. That's the whole point of being on a team and a roster. Siege is a game where you are played with teammates. Just because you have a bad performance, that is literally what the other four are there for. They're allowed to pick up your slack, but it still doesn't go out without saying that Iconic isn't making calls. He isn't feeding information.
He's doing what he needs to do.
Yeah, he isn't even setting up his teammates for that success. Just because you are having a bad game, that doesn't reflect that you as player are bad. It's just not your game, and they won a 7-3. That still came down to the team all coming together, figuring out the gaps they needed to fill, or figure out what needed to be done to close out that series in such a dominant fashion.
Well, let's see if the vibes are as high as we think they are in the background. We have the legendary Alec Fultz on deck to talk to us about this game. Dude, can you hear me all right?
Well, we can't hear you.
Muted, big guy.
Oh, man. Check your mic real quick. But meanwhile, I think you can still hear me, so think about my question while you figure out what your mic's doing. How has it been over these past couple of weeks having Iconic on the team? Because you really only had him on the squad for, what, about 3 weeks at this point, right? Does his mic work? Oh, no.
Well, thankfully, I can read lips. And what he's saying
What did he
right
say,
now
Lex?
is it feels good. Iconic being back on the team, yep. Felt that one.
I thought he was actually about to go crazy with the ASL. I thought he was about to.
Oh, homie really thought he had it down, yeah. So where did Fultz place on that scoreboard, by the way? I mean, he was ace, he was planting,
middle of the pack.
he was, yeah.
I think he was middle of the pack overall.
Also,
scoreboard.
hold on, was he Primus or was he?
He was Primus, yeah, he was Primus. He had a huge 4K on the Frost one round jumping out.
That one I remember.
That
yeah.
comes with inexperience then, because there wasn't a Claymore there.
Exactly. I mean, that was one of those big plays that we see SSG make, and just Fultz in general, his whole career story being where Ashen was at a certain point. He was that main entry. He was that star player. They won an invitational, and now seeing him evolve into a smarter player, a slower player, almost as a leader that SSG back then and the current SSG now needs. And obviously, when you have Iconic alongside of him, it's just that much easier to put the pieces of the puzzle together. They always had an answer. They always had a response for what LG was showing. And it's not always about the numbers, because if you looked at LG, a lot of their numbers were close together, but they just couldn't close out those rounds, especially when it came down to these 1v1s, 2v2s.
But again, like we said at the beginning of the game, if they were to lose today, which they did, if they lose maybe another game after this, will they still figure all of the minutia of what their identity is? not the end of the world for that team.
The important thing for a new team like that doesn't have the set experience is that they actually allow themselves to learn and reflect on these losses. That is the biggest thing, and I think with a lot of new teams is where they struggle, is when you are in such a high-octane environment that pressure really gets to you, and then you kind of maybe wipe off a loss for more than what it is. But you really need to be able to dig down and realize where those mistakes are and implement those fixes and changes going into the next game, because that's what's really going to set LG from a bottom team to a top team.
Let's get the guy with the shades back on screen real quick. Alec, can you hear me now?
Yeah. You hear me?
Hey, we finally hear you,
There
dude.
we go.
Congrats on the dub. I'll ask you that question one more time. You've only been scrimming with Iconic for, what, about 2.5 weeks at this point? What's it like having his energy on the team?
Yeah, it was a big turnaround, obviously, from Invite, and one of the things that we actually had to work on that was a problem initially is we have so many voices on this team, so comps were kind of just flying, so we made it a goal pretty early to kind of identify who calls what, who has the ball in certain scenarios, and kind of just getting the voices in order, because we have so many now with him. But no, it's been great. Yeah.
To jump off that question, I mean, since getting Iconic, obviously you guys have a lot of voices, but did he take a majority of that, I guess, leadership role, or is it still kind of a bounce of all of you guys together?
Yeah, so I mean, the way it works is he pretty much has the final say on the attack and defense, what we do, and then me and Forrest kind of just iron out the details or things we think are not a good call or whatever. But he pretty much has the keys, and me and the other guys just kind of optimize it essentially.
Well, I don't really have like a super crazy in-depth question, because you guys, your performance from Atlanta and performance from Invite changed drastically in a big matter. Are you guys now going into this season kind of still with that same mindset of what Invite was? Like, are you changing anything different, or are you still keeping the same pace and now just bringing Iconic into that mix and finding that rhythm again, just again with adding Iconic?
Yeah, you're gonna see pretty much the same SSG. I think our performance at Invite, like I think we were very close to having a great performance.
Absolutely.
We had a decent performance, but we didn't have a great one. And I think with the addition of Iconic, hopefully we can kind of reach that spot that we want to. But nothing too drastic is really going to change from us.
I remember what your guys' antics were like at the Atlanta Major, because I'm pretty sure my room is right next to your guys' prac room about 4 or 5 months ago. I remember what I was hearing through the walls. What was your favorite moment from the Invitational in Brazil? Even if you guys didn't go very far, was there any core memory that unlocked for you when you were there in Sao Paulo?
Goodness, there are too many.
Pick a good one.
I mean, probably the best one, looking back, is like just Ashen standing on business with Troy, just giving it to him right to his face. That was pretty funny. It wasn't very funny in the moment, obviously, because I was razzed up. We just lost, but like it was a pretty iconic moment. I could say that.
I do have one more question, Fold. Sorry to keep you here longer. How impactful is it for you, obviously being the statue player that you are, the history that you have, of, again, bringing Ashen onto this roster and him performing the way that he is and constantly improving? Like, what does that do for your mental?
Yeah, I mean, it's very motivating to have young blood like that, and he's not like a young mechanical, just kind of just weirdo. Like he's an actual like beast out of the game. He's a cool dude. He gets after it, and like he lets it hang, which is cool to see from a rookie.
I love that.
It seems like it really fits the culture you guys have built up over there. Then again, man, congratulations on the dub. We'll see you guys next week. Okay.
All right, see you guys. Thank you.
Big win for the guys on Spacestation over LG today, and just like that, even though it was a lot shorter than we anticipated for not just today, but for this week, that is kickoff weekend of the North American League, basically done and dusted at this point. Gents, what are you doing? What are you doing over there?
We were just looking at each other.
Just looking at each other.
All right, I'll just leave it at that. Guys, what did you think about how this first week went? Even though we only had 4 games to play today, good precursor for how the rest of this is going to go, or is there still way more you need to see?
It was great.
Yeah, I think it was overall a good day. We want to specifically take away from one game. Like I said, the OXG Los game, that being an Oregon game, I think there's still a lot that needs to be shown from both these teams outside of an Oregon map. But outside of that, I mean, every other game, sure, there was that 7-2, and, you know, we don't want to. I'm going to skip over that one.
Skip over that one.
To the LG. But I think this was a really good day to see how some of these teams are going to turn out. But there still needs to be some areas for me that there's going to be a need to be a little more proof shown in that pudding.
I think to put it simply, biggest flop of the day obviously was DZ, but the biggest improvement and the biggest upside that I've seen so far would definitely have to be with M80. And so
yeah,
I'm excited to see how the rest of the season pans out. Obviously, I don't think we could have asked for better starting games in my opinion. And even though it was a little bit shorter of an experience, I'm still happy that we got to see such high-level games. Like I said, I think these games were some of the closest that we had this week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just nice to be back watching Siege again, especially after coming back of SI,
Yeah, dude.
being here and being in the NAL again. I can't begin to tell you guys how much I just love being in the Siege environment and atmosphere.
Yeah, do you love it?
Yeah, I love that.
Is it great?
That's great.
Don't use that voice. It's already giving me a migraine. All right, so that's all we have for today. This week is already over, but now we need to make at least a clarification about what is coming up in the future. This is how the standings look, at least for the moment. This board will be full, chock full of even more numbers as we move through this season. But here is how things are going to work for next week. There will be more games played because obviously we were able to play any of the games from day one yesterday. Those are going to be interspersed throughout the rest of the season. We may have more of them than regularly scheduled played as early as next week. Again, Thursday and Friday is where we will see these games happen. But for right now, that's basically all she wrote for week number 1. Gentlemen, thank you guys very much for joining me this first week.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Hopefully, we'll get our own Jesse J. Chick on the desk here with us at some point very soon. Visa pending. Jesse, we obviously miss you, and we hope that we can get you here soon. But for right now, that's all she wrote for week 1. Thank you guys very much for joining us, and we will see you for week 2 of the NAL next Thursday. Have a good night.